A third of South African girls experience some form of violence, often at the hands of someone they know. Violence against children remains a big challenge facing our society, despite efforts to curb the scourge. Police Minister Bheki Cele warned about the rise in murder and rape cases in schools. This comes after he released the third quarter crime stats on Wednesday. Now let's unpack this with Toby Fricker, who is the Chief of Communication at Unicef. Toby, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your time. Now, the third quarter crime stats released this week continue to show shocking behavior among those in the borders of this country. But even more alarming is the scale of violence against children. In just 6 months, 558 children have been murdered.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the violence against children is shocking. And we've said that before, and every time we see the crime statistics, unfortunately, things haven't improved. We see 315 children who were murdered in 90 days between July and September, and that's a 10% rise on the same time last year. Another 300 who suffered grievous bodily harm, and many more, nearly 2,000 as well, affected by violence. So it's a massive issue, and it's really devastating, not only because it cuts young lives short, but it destroys families, it destroys communities, and it affects the country as a whole.
But do these statistics even tell the full story?
No, I mean, these are the police statistics, and of course there are probably many other cases that are not reported. And that's, of course, a massive concern as well. You know, data is extremely important, and these police statistics are extremely important for UNICEF, for government, for civil society as a whole, to enable us to try and respond in some way, to understand the situation better. But I'm sure it doesn't tell the full story, but it presents a picture of what's going on, and unfortunately it doesn't look great at the moment.
What do you believe are the main contributors to this violence, especially inflicted upon children?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is we need to go down to the household level. A lot of violence still happens at the household level. And it's absolutely critical that we work with parents, we work with caregivers, and try and sort of influence change at that level as quickly as we can. And that means, for example, in early childhood development, it means getting parents involved in the lives of their children, of youth, more broadly, and getting them involved on an everyday basis, taking them to school, understanding what they're doing at school. But it starts right from when a child is born at that point. And that can really help to influence, to change some of the situation that is happening right now.
Toby, I mean, you speak of the influence and the participation that parents need to have, especially when it comes to their children. But we also know that South Africa has a huge HIV burden. How much pressure is that on the loss of parents on child-headed households?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive burden, and I think what we need to also look at, there are so many stresses in society that parents, that caregivers, that children then have to take on responsibilities themselves, and it's a huge burden, and let's not sort of be naive about that. We need to understand what the burden is, and we need to then provide the support services that can help to try and alleviate some of that stress. That could be, for example, safe parks that we work with the Department of Social Development and other partners, which just provide some space, some space for children to be children, to come and get health services, to come and get holistic services that children need, that can help to at least alleviate some stress that they're going through.
You mentioned the Department of Social Development. Just unpack for us some of those interventions that you as UNICEF South Africa are underpinning in the collaboration with the department.
Yeah, well, the RESIHA program is one, which is a resilience program, which is about providing a holistic response to violence against children, because it's really a cross-sectoral issue. So Safe Parks, for example, provide everything in one place where a child can go and get support with their homework, with education. There's an example of a child and youth care worker who works in a park in Soweto, who spoke about when she was a child, how she went to one of these safe parks because she lost her parents. She lived with her uncle. Her uncle was violent, and the safe park really essentially saved her life. So it's examples like that that really show that we can make a difference on an individual level, but it's about scaling that up, providing quality services, and making sure children, young people, parents and caregivers also know where to go.
We Today marks the start of 16 days of activism against GBV. Now, beyond the police ministry and the Department of Social Development and all other these organizations that are putting in efforts in ensuring that our children are safe, what should we do as a society as a whole in order to protect our children?
Well, I mean, we need to bring everyone into the discussion. You know, we've been talking about gender-based violence, the importance now of bringing boys, bringing men into that discussion, having everyone in the room to talk about these issues, having everyone in the room to understand what's happening, but also then to be able to respond, to be able to provide better services. You know, let's not forget that there are, you know, cycles of trauma. You know, violence can breed violence, and we need to break that cycle as quickly as we can. And that involves everyone. That involves families, that involves Unicef, that involves civil society, involves government, and all of us to do what we can.
Are there countries that we could look out to in terms of just taking lessons in how they've done it differently in reducing especially the crime statistics when it comes to gender-based violence?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are examples of where, so for example, in Uganda, they had a very active program that brought in men and boys into the discussion around violence in the community in the north of Uganda. And just that approach in terms of getting men and boys to lead some of those discussions, to talk to the community, to be with community leaders, and also faith-based networks can really play a role in breaking down some of this violence, breaking what is the sort of the masculinity, toxic masculinity that can actually feed into some of the violence as well. So there are examples, and we certainly need to learn more from them to really try and sort of make some difference as quickly as we can.
All right, Toby, thank you so much for your time this evening. That was UNICEF Communications Chief Toby Fricker speaking to us about the alarming rate of child murders that have taken place in South Africa over the last 3 months.